Hello and welcome to episode 13 of the Parent Playing Video Game Podcast, PPVG. On this episode, we're going to be talking about Castlevania Symphony of the Night. We'll go over the usuals. Then we're going to go over the gameplay. We'll go over items and weapons, things like that in there. The story, of course. We're also going to go over the music and how kiddable it is. And I feel like I'm forgetting something, but you know what? We'll get to it when we get to it. Oh yeah, the time commitment. That's the one. And then I'll conclude with a rating and my notes on it, sort of thing. So yeah, it's the last week or so. Not too much been going on. Last week didn't really do too much, but this last weekend was WrestleMania 40. So I used to watch wrestling way back in the day. When probably when I was in high school, junior high, that kind of thing, late 90s, early 2000s. And then I kind of just fell out of it, stopped watching it. And then just decided earlier this year, one of the podcasts that I listened to, Remember the Game, definitely hit them up. Awesome podcast. He's a big wrestling fan, and he was talking about some of the wrestling stuff, and I kind of, got into it, and like, oh yeah, I'll watch it, and figured out how to watch it. It was a bit of a challenge, and started watching with the Royal Rumble earlier this year, and yeah, I've been watching it and having tons of fun. My wife watches it sometimes, not all the time. She enjoys it a little bit, but my son loves it. He's really into it. And so, yeah, we watched that. I think I did the math. Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday. I'm pretty sure it was like 18-20 hours of wrestling. It was a large commitment of wrestling. It was a lot of fun. Really enjoyed it. The matches over WrestleMania, I think I was like 9 or 10 out of 13 of what I wanted to win. So it was definitely a good weekend for me. That's for sure. Also on the weekend, I picked up a PlayStation Portal. I wanted to try it out, and it's been fantastic. So I've actually been able to play a little bit more of more Final Fantasy VII Rebirth while watching more wrestling. So, two birds, one stone kind of thing. It's I've played it, the PlayStation app on my phone. I played it on a laptop, and it's always been fine. Like, the laptop worked technically, but it wasn't very comfortable. And on the phone, it worked. It was comfortable, but it didn't work very well. I was always dropping connection and getting very blurry. And I'm like, you know what? I'm going to try this. I've been thinking about it since they originally got released. I don't even remember when. It was a while ago, almost a year ago or so. And so I decided to, drop the cash on that. And it's been great. The quality, the feel of it's fantastic. The screen's a great size. Battery life seems to be pretty good. I mean, I'm not playing for hours on hours and hours, but I played a couple of 2-hour-ish sessions with it, and it's been a lot of fun. Been really good. And the very last thing, probably the most amazing thing that I did this weekend, was I replaced the smoke detector in the kitchen. Well, sort of in the kitchen. Yeah, replace that. How fun, right? Being a homeowner, yay! I mean, I'm lucky to be a homeowner, don't get me wrong. But yeah, it was going off. I think it went off on Sunday morning, like 8 or 9 times when we were cooking breakfast. I'm like, we got to figure this thing out. Turns out it was expired by 4 years. So yeah, it needed to be replaced. So we got a new one. So far, so good. When I press the button, it makes noise. I don't know if it goes off when there's a fire. I'm not really too keen on lighting a fire to test it. But hey, got to put some faith in it, kind of thing. So as I mentioned earlier, I've been playing Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. Again, not a huge amount in there, just been busy with, life and such. But yeah, it's still so good. And one of the guys at work is playing it. Actually, a few people at work are playing it. And we pretty much every time we bring it up, we're like, it is just such a good game. So I think a lot of people would compare it obviously to the original and how good the original versus this one is. And it's like, I would see them as just almost like they complement each other really well. Like, yes, you can play the original, you can get the turn-based combat, you get that original story, and then with Remake and Rebirth, definitely not going to spoil any of this stuff, obviously, but they complement the story. Then it's not like you just play it with better graphics, which I know a lot of people wanted way back when it was announced, or the original remake was announced years and years ago. They just wanted a graphical refresh kind of thing. They wanted it the same, and I was in that camp. And I was very concerned because when I was playing Final Fantasy 15, I had a really hard time with that combat. I just could not figure out how to do it. And then yeah, I got Remake and of course Rebirth, and the combat in there just clicks with me. I really have a lot of fun with it. So probably just going to continue playing that. Maybe I'll find a phone game. I don't know. I'm tempted to look at picking up WWE 2K24, to stick with the wrestling theme, because I think that would be a great game to play while watching some, random TV on the couch and playing some wrestling. I think would be fun. I used to play them just, like everyone else back in the day, WCW versus NWO, WWF No Mercy on the N64. And I loved those games. I would love to get into it again. But again, I just bought the PlayStation Portal. I don't know if I want to drop another $90 on another brand new game. So yeah, tough pill to swallow. We'll see. We'll see how it goes. But yeah. Now, as we've done our potatoes, let's get on to the meat of this meal that is episode 13. So as I said, it's going to be Castlevania Symphony of the Night. So it was released back in March 20th, 1997, and it's almost 3 years to the day to Super Metroid. And just a quick little aside, actually, I wasn't too sure what game to talk about. And I sent a list to my wife. I'm like, here you go. This is what I've done. I have a big list of, games that I want to talk about and things like that. So I sent it over to her, and she mentioned one game. I'm like, oh, I don't know. I just did this. Blah, blah. And then she said, well, what about Castlevania? And I'm like, oh. And I'm like, what about Symphony of the Night? And the reason is I'll talk about it more, but Super Metroid and Castlevania Symphony of the Night, that's where the Metroidvania genre kind of comes from. So as I said, I'll share more of my thoughts on that later, but I thought it was also quite interesting that Super Metroid came out 3 years prior to this in 1994 on March 19th. And it's interesting that you have Super Metroid Symphony of the Night being the, parents, let's say, of the Metroidvania genre, releasing almost exactly 3 years apart. Kind of cool. It is one of the most well-known and beloved, I'd say, Castlevanias. It did change it up a little bit. The original Castlevanias were kind of classic arcade games where you went through the whole game, kind of like Ghosts and Goblins, where you got through the whole game and then you beat it and you're done. Point space, all that kind of thing. Classic Nintendo kind of game. Symphony Night kind of did a bit of a tweak, and where, part of the Metroidvania is that you have unlockables that open up different areas. You get a double jump, well, now you can get to this area, and then you get a super jump, you can go to this area. You can now walk in water, because in this, as a vampire, spoiler, come on, it's been some amount of years, almost 30. Yeah, you play as a vampire, but you can't go in water, it hurts you. So you get all these items to unlock the different areas, just like in Super Metroid, hence why Metroidvania. It's not my first, but probably third or fourth Castlevania. I didn't play it when it was new. And funny enough, when I read about it, it actually apparently did not sell that well. Sounds like the marketing of it was quite poor, from what I read, but it sold like 700,000 units and that's it. Which nowadays you think like, how? That's so low. I mean, Super Metroid, I think, actually sold about the same, maybe just over 1 million kind of thing. Yet these are, foundational games in the gaming society, let's call it, where they were so important and still are so important to so many games that have come out. There's been so many great games, like Hollow Knight, Guacamelee, Axiom Verge. I went through those already. They don't exist without this and Super Metroid together being, becoming the Metroidvania genre. So, yeah, I never played on the original console. I believe I actually got it first time on the Xbox 360, probably like 10 years after it came out. So around mid-2000s, let's say. Even though I had the PlayStation, yeah, it just didn't really pique my interest. My first Castlevania was one that we've already covered, which was Circle of the Moon, first one on the Game Boy Advance. That one's still my favorite. And I think maybe a little bit of, nostalgia on that one. But also just, I really like it. So also, I found out when I was going through this, and I had forgotten this, and then remembered when I was doing my notes, it was also on a Sega Saturn. So released on both the PlayStation 1 and the Sega Saturn, and Sega Saturn actually had a couple extra items, and I think a little bit of different character things, like who you could play kind of thing. But because I never played the Saturn one, I wasn't going to dive too much into that on this one. I'm just going to go, whenever I do these episodes, my little thing, it's all based off my experience. It isn't factual. It's very opinionated. So I'm not really going to be able to weigh in on the Saturn side of things because I don't think I've ever actually even seen a Saturn, so I definitely haven't played it. It's been on more systems since. It kind of stopped at the PS4. It was on iOS and Android, which wonder how that would go, touchscreen and everything. But yeah, it's up there. You can still kind of play it now. And then, yeah, as I said, part of the Metroidvania genre together. I'm sure if you've listened to the previous episode, Super Metroid is, of the two, definitely my more favored one. Personally, I find it odd that it's called Metroidvania. Again, personal opinion, Metroidvania, when, well, as I already mentioned, Super Metroid came out 3 years prior to this. I don't know why it's called Metroidvania, because Castlevania, again, from my thoughts and my point of view, and if anyone has any differing opinions, definitely let me know. I think really the only way you can get a hold of me is Instagram, if that. So good luck. But yeah, I think the only real thing is that I don't know what Castlevania Symphony Night really brought to the whole Metroidvania genre. Why is it included in the name when, from what I can tell, it's pretty much all Super Metroid? Because Castlevania didn't seem to do anything different. Again, and I may be misunderstanding or misremembering or something, but yeah, I'd be definitely curious on other people's thoughts on that. But yeah, I definitely would say, hey, Metroidvania, yeah, well, Super Metroid did like 85-90% of that, and Castlevania maybe did a little bit. Alrighty, so we'll start with our first category, which is the story. And as always, I want to make sure people are aware. Spoilers. Again, this game is 30-ish years old, 27 years old, whatever it is. And yeah, I'm not going to be, skirting around anything. So in the story, you play as Dracula's son, Alucard. And this is actually something for way too long I didn't realize. Alucard is Dracula backwards. I had no clue. But you are half vampire, half human, and pretty much what happens is, a lot of the stories from my knowledge for Castlevanias is that Dracula's castle appears for a reason. There may be many different reasons, but when it appears, there's someone that needs to go and destroy it, pretty much. Most of the time, in a lot of other Castlevanias, that kind of lands on the Belmont clan. But in this one, for reasons, and I really don't know. I wish I did, but Alucard is the one that goes after it. So you go up to the castle, you enter it, you're exploring the castle, you're unlocking item A, which helps you access area B, and so on and so forth. You get to the end of the castle, and you're all done, but you're not. One thing that is a little bit divisive in this game, I've heard, is once you get near the end, the castle can actually be flipped upside down. So once you get to the end and you're like at 98% map completion, you're actually at like 54 or 50 or 48 or 49 sort of thing. You're only halfway because the map completion goes to like 200%. So you get all the way through, you have to flip it upside down, which isn't the easiest to figure out on your own. It is kind of a cryptic sort of thought. I think you have to wear a very specific item in a specific area and do a specific move, which then opens up the area where you can flip it. So yeah, you can beat the game without ever actually defeating Dracula, really. So get through, as I said, I know it's a bit divisive. I think people back then, that's just how you played games. You just figured things out. People now, I don't know, maybe it's just more of where the quality of life that we have in a lot of games nowadays just wasn't there in this game. So when I played it, as I said, it was about maybe 10-ish years later, and I had the internet, so I didn't necessarily know what was going to happen, but I wasn't shy about looking at a guide because I'm like, well, I'm just trying to make it through this game, I'm trying to have a fun time, I'm a little confused. Oh, that's cool. And then poof, I'm upside down. So you don't, to be clear, you don't go upside down, but the whole castle flips upside down. So if in a room you're walking along and then you go, a flight of stairs and then you're in the next room, when you do that the other way, now you're walking kind of on the roof. You're not upside down, but the whole world is. I hope that makes sense. If not, I mean, just do a quick Google if you're interested and you can see what I'm saying, sort of thing. And then now, of course, you have the whole second half of the game to do. Get through there, same thing. Get some items, unlock some areas, blah blah blah, and then you defeat Big Papa Dracula, and then the castle is destroyed. And from again my memory, there's not much else to it. So, and again, I didn't know this when I played it until I started doing my notes. So again, I don't have a huge amount to put on this, but apparently you can play multiple characters. So there's Richter Belmont, who I had mentioned, the Belmont clan. You can play as him, and then there's Maria. Last name is escaping me right now, who you can play with as well. And they have different fighting styles, different items, things like that. So as I said, I didn't play that, so I can't really weigh into which is my favorite. But in the Castlevania games that I have played, the kind of like New Game Plus with different characters, generally the original character happens to be just better. So I would prefer to just stick with the original one rather than, play the other characters that are available. Alrighty, on to a little bit more of the specifics. So onto the weapons. So in the game, there's a handful of different kind of classes of weapons. So I just want to quickly go through them, kind of say what they are. There's tons of weapons. I want to say there's probably, when I looked, there's on average 10 per category, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7 maybe. So like between 60 and 70 weapons in the whole game. I mean all different damages, status effects, things like that. So the first one, the category is daggers. They're short range and they're quick. They're kind of hard to use because I kind of want to have a little bit more distance between me and the baddie. But yeah, they're pretty quick, and they don't really have any real knockback kind of thing. I think some of the bigger, heavier weapons do, but daggers not so much. One-handed swords, one-handed swords. Jeez, that one's probably my favorite. It's good. It's like a good balance of speed, range, damage, like a jack of all trades kind of thing. I think it's the best one, and I think the best sword in the game is in this category as well. Ranged. Now this is funny, as I had mentioned previously. Like the extra characters didn't really know they were in the game until I started reading up on it. Ranged weapons, I don't ever actually remember finding one of these. There's only a few. There's like 3 or 4. I don't remember ever actually finding it. But yeah, there's a few of them. I cannot really say if they're any good, but I think it'd be kind of cool to have some ranged weapons. When I saw they were pretty weak, they didn't have a huge amount of damage. I mean, that's what you get. You're further away, you do less damage, but you take less damage too. So it's the pros and cons kind of thing. And then two-handed weapons. So this one is like two-handed swords, big, heavy, like hammers or clubs, things like that. They're not a bad second. Different situations, definitely, they would be better in. But again, I kind of lean more towards the one-handed swords for the general stuff. Some bosses or something like that may be kind of good with the two-handed weapons. There's clubs. These ones are cool. They're very similar to the one-handed sword and how they work. They can be a little bit quicker sometimes, and it's almost like with the sword, Alucard swipes out. With the club, he swipes out and like down back kind of thing, so you can kind of hit from both sides with it, so they're a little bit more versatile in that way. But they cap out on how much damage they do pretty quick. I think like the best one-handed sword is like 42 attack, and the best club is like 17. So it doesn't take long until you kind of max out. And then there's fist weapons, very similar to daggers. I think it might be a shorter range and maybe a bit quicker, but with that's what makes the daggers hard, is that they're short and quick. Short range makes them hard to use, and the fist weapons being shorter, I mean, even harder. Never really played those too much. And then the shields, I looked around, I couldn't really figure it out, but I remember when you get a shield rod, it's a club, that when you have shields on, you can do kind of like a shield spell or a shield skill with the shield rod and that specific shield. So some shields will do a spell that will attack enemies, some shields that will do a little bit more of a shield around you, like a whole shield. So there's a few, that one's kind of neat, but I really don't recall ever really playing anything other than just the one-handed swords. Now, other than weapons, there's things like items like consumables, restore health, restore magic, that kind of thing. There's permanent upgrades. I'll get into them a little bit more later, but things like, health and MP, have that, and hearts, which I'll get into more later as well. Armor. So yeah, you can have some armor and sort of secondary items kind of thing to boost some skills and attributes sort of thing. There's a lot of items in this game across all this, and I didn't want to spend 2 hours going through every single one of them. So yeah, one or two weapons, and then the next one on there is the sub weapons. So those ones are pretty common in a lot of the Castlevania games, where it's kind of a secondary weapon. So instead of it just being something you can use all the time, it's almost like it has an ammunition, and the ammunition is just hearts. So let's say you have 100 hearts and you throw a dagger, it costs 1 heart, you can throw 100 daggers. Holy water costs 4 hearts, you can throw 20 of them, kind of thing. I think that's right. 25. Anyway, yeah, so with the secondary weapons that consume hearts, there's also a secondary thing with a crush. And a crush with the sub-weapon is like a big screen-filling attack. Consumes more hearts, but in a pinch, really handy. So we'll go through those sub-weapons. So dagger, I mentioned, it just throws a dagger straight ahead. It's the simple one. Again, without the actual ranged weapons, like if you're using a sword, this is your only real ranged attack. So very handy to just, chip away at something from far away. It does so little damage though, so you have to use a lot of hearts and a lot of daggers to actually, chip away at anything. And then the crush on that one throws lots of daggers straight ahead. It kind of is like a machine gun. So the crush is really good. But again, costs more hearts, right? Holy water, throw the bottle a few feet in front of you, and it lights it up with holy fire. So if there's enemies that just walk along the ground towards you, it's not a bad way to do it. Or if there's a boss that's quite wide and kind of moves very slow, you can throw a bunch of those at its feet, and it just does tons of damage, just chips away at it. The holy water crush is a rain of holy water. So it actually rains across the whole screen, and anything on there just gets hit with like a holy rain. Acid rain, but holy. And since everything in Dracula's castle is undead, it does damage. The cross is a boomerang of sorts, so that goes out a bit, and then it comes back. And if the enemy or the boss is quite large, it will keep hitting as long as it's on it. So if you time it right to go all the way to just to the back of the enemy, and then all the way, and then it comes back, you hit it with kind of the most bang for buck. So, however much it costs to throw that, you get the most hits out of it, and it does a lot of damage. That's usually my go-to in this and every other Castlevania game I've really played, is the cross is kind of the big one. Its crush, though, it's okay. It's a big pillar of light, surrounds you, drawing crosses wrap around you. It doesn't fill the screen fully, but I would say it's about maybe 2/3 to 3/4 of the screen centered on you that, gets consumed. So it definitely does some good damage for sure. The axe is the classic axe. It throws it at an arcing, so upwards, and then it arcs back down. And if you do the crush on that, a bunch of axes fly out. The stopwatch is a pretty unique one in that it freezes some enemies, slows down some more powerful ones for about 5 seconds, and then the crush on that, it just has 4 watches come out and freezes, slows them for 20 seconds. So that one's kind of cool. It's very expensive, and I always kind of felt that I'd rather just attack and kill things. I didn't really need things slowed down. But when I was reading up on this, it actually kind of alluded that maybe it would slow down bosses, which I'm like, oh, that would actually help with probably quite a few of the bosses in the game. But hey, maybe next time I play it, I'll give that a try. Holy book. A book whips kind of back and forth around the player, kind of surrounds him like a little whirlwind. And then the crush. So actually, you know what? Quickly, the holy book. I can't remember exactly. I think I'm thinking of something, but I don't know if it's exactly right. But anyway, a book whips around you back and forth, and then the crush releases a book, which summons a big beam to kind of like go across the screen. The rebound stone is kind of a lame one, to be honest with you. You throw a small stone that bounces off walls. The crush on it flashes the whole screen. So that one's kind of nice. It does just a big attack on everything. This one, though, I had to Google it and watch a YouTube video. I've never seen this. I have no clue where you get it from. And I think it's called Agwen. it sends a lightning strike, and you can hold the button to do more, I guess. And the crushes is that releases lightning in all directions. Yeah, that one, when I looked it up, I'm like, I don't know. Maybe that was a Saturn exclusive one, and I didn't notice that when I was looking it up. But yeah, I don't ever recall seeing that one. And then the last one is apparently called Bibuti. I had no clue what it was called. I always called it a little hand or fist, is what it looked like to me. And I guess it's ashes. I couldn't even tell you what it was, but you like throw clumps on the ground, and enemies that get near it get damaged. It's kind of similar to the holy water. I always kind of like, if it was between the two, I would go with the holy water. And then the crush releases a continuous smoke blast above, Alucard's head, kind of thing. As I said, I don't ever remember knowing what that one was called. And ashes, yeah, I don't know. Like, unless maybe, because again, I played the digital versions only, which never had a manual. So I wonder if in the original game, 97 manuals were still a thing. I wonder if that's where all these names of things came from. But yeah, as I said, Bibuti, had no clue that's what it was called. So that one does it for weapons, sub-weapons kind of thing. As I mentioned, there are the items, consumables, and then there's also the permanent upgrades. So as I said, there's the health and MP upgrades and the heart, maximum upgrades. And then there's also relics. So relics are permanent upgrades. You get them and you can... No, actually, I'm not 100% sure. I'm pretty sure you can toggle them on or off. But I might be getting that mixed up with another Castlevania, where when you get these, you can toggle them on or off. Anyway, so there's a huge amount to choose from, or not choose from, to collect. I'm just going to go over kind of like the primary ones kind of thing. And then, yeah, the rest of it, there's a lot to go through. Again, I didn't want to spend a huge amount of time. So the first three are... it allows Alucard to turn into something else. So the soul of the bat turns into a bat, allows you to fly around. You can then get a couple more of them that unlock more skills. So you can do like a sonar thing. So you can do that to fly through a specific area where it's dark and the reflection bounces off the side. So you're able to kind of see, like a bat would, see where you're going via the sonar. Soul of the wolf allows you to turn into a wolf. The wolf's actually really handy because it allows you to go really, really fast. And in some areas of the game, it's a really long hallway. And when you get up to a certain speed, kind of like in Super Metroid, you are like invincible. So you can just like run through the enemies really quick. And again, all of these lead to, just like in the classic, Metroidvania style, leads to more areas, more items, progression in the game. And then the last one that you can turn into is Mist, so Form of Mist. So this one allows you to, I think it's used in a couple places in the game. There's bars, like prism bars kind of thing, that prevent you to go from, one side to the other. You can turn into the Mist. You're only in it for a couple seconds, and you kind of just go through, and then you're done. So, again, it's the progression kind of thing. So it's interesting because they could have easily had something like yellow keys, right? Like in Doom games, old school, where you'd have a key to get through the yellow doors. They could have easily had a yellow key to get through a door, but they said, you know what, Alucard can turn into mist. He's a vampire. He can do anything. So those are the three that kind of physically transform you and allow you to do more and, get further in the game, of course. And then these next, these next two, Spirit Orb and Fairy Scroll, those ones are really just quality of life things. So the Spirit Orb just allows you to see your damage. So when you start the game, you cannot see how much damage you're doing. So if you're like, it takes 3 hits, it's like, okay, it takes 3 hits, but is that 10 damage, 20, 50 each hit? I don't know. And then the next one is Fairy Scroll, which shows the name of the enemy when hitting it. Now this one I always thought was like, yeah, okay, whatever. It's neat to see the names of the enemies. But when you're looking for a specific armor or a weapon because they drop from enemies, and you're like, it's on Lilith or a Lich or something else that begins with L, apparently. Showing the names is really handy because then you can be like, oh, that's the enemy. Now I know where it is, kind of thing. Or now I know what it is, so I can go find it, kill it, and farm it for more items or whatever. Then we get a couple, movement abilities. So there's the gravity boots. Never mind, we're going to go backwards. There's the Leap Stone, enables double jump. That's a classic staple in Castlevania games. And then the Gravity Boots, which is the super jump, which is in a couple other ones as well, where it allows you to do a massively high jump. Then there's the Holy Symbol. That one, I mentioned it earlier, where water does damage. The Holy Symbol pretty much makes it so water doesn't do damage to you. So, again, it's just the... Again, it could have been a simple, hey, red key to get into this area, because the water is really only in one area, or one or two areas in the game. But again, it makes it a little bit more, it makes sense in the story. Instead of it just being a door that has a key, it's something that will prevent a vampire from going there, and this is how you get through it. So I think it's kind of cool. It keeps you a little bit more into the story, right? Then there's a couple more here. There's cards. So cards will summon familiars. So there's 5 familiars. There's Bat, Ghost, Fairy, Demon, and Sword. And they all kind of do some little things here and there. Like, for instance, the Fairy, I think that one will... And again, I might be getting it mixed up with that again. I think this one helps you find secrets and also helps heal you if you're low on health, kind of thing. But now I think I might be getting it mixed up with Bloodstained. See, this is the problem. I haven't played this game in quite a long time, and I think I played several other Castlevanias and Bloodstained, much more since then. So I might be getting it mixed up. Anyway, so you get some familiars. They can do all sorts of different fun skills. Again, there's a lot in there. And then this section I said is the Vlad bits. So Vlad is Dracula. I think that's his first name. Vlad Dracula? Nope. Dracula Vlad? Count Dracula Vlad. Either way, it is Dracula. So the bits are his heart, tooth, rib, ring, and eye. And they all kind of do status effects. So one of them, prevents poison. One of them prevents petrify, which are very frustrating in the game. One of them increases your strength, that kind of stuff. So not needed at all. Those ones, I don't think you need them to... I think there's like true endings, multiple endings in the game, and like if you, I put in quotes, beat the game before you ever find the upside down castle, then you'll beat the game in that way, but it's like one ending. But if you want the true ending, I think you actually might need all the bits as well. But that's just from my memory. So, but those are handy to get, especially the ones that help prevent poison and petrify, because those ailments are very frustrating to deal with on a regular basis. Okay, now is the music, and I'll be upfront. This, to me, when I was writing the notes, I was having a hard time, hearing a song. A lot of times, when I think of a game, and I think a lot of people do as well, music is one of those things that triggers memories. So you'll hear a song and be like, oh yeah, I remember that, or you'll see something and you'll remember the song. I could not think of one song in this game. And I was like thinking, looking at the different areas, looking at the different enemies, all that stuff. I could not think of a song because I kept thinking of other Castlevania songs, other Castlevania games. And then when I started going through and I'm listening to some of the soundtrack, trying to, pick some songs, I realized that it's, and I don't want to be mean, but it's probably the weakest part of the game for me. But it is what it is. I'm not going to like everything about every game, Obviously, if you've been listening to the episodes prior, I've been pretty, happy with all the games I've played, right? And I want to be excited, but also I want to talk about games that I have played that maybe aren't all, 100%, they're not all 10s, right? So with the music, the composer is Michiru Yamane. I'm sure I've said it, but I really love Japanese names and trying to pronounce them. I hope I'm not doing it terribly, but you never know. Anyway, as I said, not the most favorite part of the game. But when I did go through and I played some, I did hit a few songs that I wanted to bring up. So the first one that we had for the intro was the Marble Gallery. That one I remember. And it's the areas that I remember going through a lot in the game or having difficulties with where I remember the music. So that one I remember is I think it's one of the really, really long corridors. And there's guys that do poison in there and petrify, all these different status ailments. And it's a pretty challenging part when you get to it. Like the difficulty spikes a bit. So I think, if I'm remembering correctly, again, it's hard because it's been a while, but I would say that, yeah, that one is a really good one, and I thought it was a good little intro song. Next on the list is Wood Carved Partita. It's kind of a twangy, library kind of feeling. I don't know why, and then I took a look, and it is in a place called the Long Library. It's a pretty fun and upbeat song. It has a pretty unique sound to it, and doesn't seem like it should be in Dracula's castle at all, because it's not scary or spooky. And then the next song I chose is that. It is The Lost Portrait. It's kind of gentle and spooky. It's kind of like a haunted house, but pretty haunted house kind of vibe. It's just very calming, nice to go to sleep with, maybe. Just a very gentle, nice song. So kind of goes with the vibe of the Dracula castle. And for the music, as I said, that's pretty much it. The music is definitely the weakest and kind of a forgettable part, clearly, because I couldn't remember any music of the game. But it is what it is. Okay, time commitment. So the time commitment on this, I couldn't tell you how long it took me when I beat it, originally. I mean, maybe 10 hours, something like that. 10 to 12 hours, something like that. And even now, it wouldn't be really that different from that, because, again, I've only played it a handful of times, and if that, and I can't really remember much of it. So, and then when I went to how long to beat, the main story is 8.5, and completionist is 15.5. I'm like, okay, 10 to 12, that's pretty on par kind of thing. I did take a look at the speedruns, and there's 5 categories. And as I was going through it, I'm just like, oh, that name looks familiar. Oh, that name looks familiar. All 5 of these categories are led by Dragon Blitz. And 4 out of the 5 are beaten by about a minute or more, which is insane, because these runs are like 30 minutes to 40 minutes kind of thing. To beat it by a full minute is insane. So on a couple of the categories, I took a look. Glitchless any percent. I don't know if you've listened. Yeah, I like the glitchless runs for sure. That one's 30 minutes and 49 seconds. And then the next one I thought was quite interesting. It was all bosses at 30 minutes 59 seconds. So it's only a 10-second difference. So either the routing is really different, or glitchless any percent is pretty much the exact same thing as all bosses. I'd have to sit down and watch both and kind of be curious about how the different routes are done. But one thing that's really interesting, I said 4 out of the 5 are beaten by about a minute, whereas the other one is beaten by 400 milliseconds. That's insane. Like, everything's a minute, and this one's 400 milliseconds. That run, from what I remember, was about 17 minutes, so it's definitely a shorter run in the first place. But yeah, 400 milliseconds is a very, very close run for sure. It's the kiddable time. So this one, as last time, it was Super Metroid, and it was kind of like similar. I had the same sort of thought process. Maybe not at first, because challenging, but hey, maybe you could just practice. And then I also thought, well, again, depends on how young the kid is, but Castlevania and the themes of Castlevania, Dracula and blood and death and all these demons and things. Yeah, Symphony of the Night, one thing that it did really, really well was this really cool graphical effects on the PlayStation, and they were really, really good quality graphics, especially for the time. Even now, it still looks really good. But you could actually start seeing detail in some of these things. So again, the blood was more, visible and noticeable, and like the enemies themselves and how grotesque they could be, especially the bosses, is very easily seen. So that could make it maybe not for the younger folks. But also, as I have said for so many things, I think of this, I'm 39 years old, and if I say kiddable, I'm like, okay, well, could a kid play this? And I always seem to say yes, because I'm like, well, one, I was a kid when I was playing video games. Like, my earliest memories, like, before I left England, I was 7 when we left, and we were playing video games there, right? So, I was playing games probably from when I was 5 years old, at least, or even younger. I don't know for sure, but I've been playing games for a very long time. So, in reality, yeah, I'm pretty sure they could play almost anything. Like, if you see, when I see kids, anyone, especially younger, or even like teenagers, younger, preteens, playing Fortnite, it blows my mind. I tried playing that a little bit, and I'm like, I don't know how to build anything. And then one of the guys I work with, he's just showing, I'm watching him, and I mean, he's just carrying me. I never got a win because I was that bad at it, but I'm just like, I don't know how he does it. His fingers move so fast. It was very impressive. So with that in mind, I'm like, you know what? I think kids can play anything, really. It's just that, sure, it may not be, the easiest thing at first, but who said anything ever is? You got to learn and practice, right? So with that too, there's the consumables in the game. So like you can have food and potions to restore your health. So that makes it a not easier. Well, yeah, easier. I was gonna say not easy, but easier. Because yeah, if you're fighting a boss, you can have 20 potions. And if you're like, oh, I can't seem to do it, well, you can farm the enemies to get more potions. So I mean, there's ways to make it easier, kind of thing. And as well, enemies are giving out experience. I don't know if it's the first. I think it is. It's either the first or one of the first Castlevania games to actually have some RPG mechanics, such as attributes like strength, vitality, speed, and luck, things like that. And actually, I don't think it has speed. It has luck though, and it has health, and it has levels. So when you level up, you gain a little bit of health. So yeah, with that, you could grind the enemies for items, grind them for leveling up, and you get a little bit stronger, and then you can take on the boss or the next area, kind of thing. So yeah, there's definitely ways to make it a little bit easier. And again, as I've said before on one of the previous episodes, that the longer you take to level up and grind for items, the better you just get at the game in general. You're practicing, right? So yeah, there's definitely ways to improve and make it a little bit easier. And then the last thing on where you can play it. So I mentioned earlier, it seems that the PS4 is pretty much the newest, which I would think means that you can play it on the PS5. iOS and Android have versions. Don't know how well they would work with the touchscreen, but it does give you that portability of it. I did not see if it was on Switch or not. Again, it's kind of it's not the most readily available game. I did see it was on like the PS Vita. But again, not like Vitas are easy to come by nowadays. But yeah, a few options. And I don't know if the newest ones had things like save states. But honestly, in the game, there's so many save points in it that and almost before every boss, there's a save point, which also refills your health and magic or MP or whatever it is. So I feel like save states, you probably don't really need them. So yeah. I think, yeah, you have a couple options there, but nothing super modern kind of thing. All right, let's finish this guy up. So the conclusion on this one, eh? So the rating, as I mentioned, this is a beloved game. A lot of people really like it. I know that it got fantastic scores, Metacritic, all these things. But for me, I'm gonna go with a 7 out of 10. And while I was writing these notes, I was like, oh yeah, it's an 8 out of 10. It's an 8 out of 10. But as I did it more, and I mean, I think maybe the music kind of was just like, yeah, the music, it drops it down by one kind of thing. 7 out of 10. It's a good game. It's not a game I'm running back to play. A lot of the times when I'm doing the podcast, I'm like, oh yeah, I want to play this again. Like when I'm done recording and I finish it and I'm ready to put it up and upload it, I'm just like, I could play this game right now. This one, I'm like, Like if anything, I'd be like, yeah, maybe I'll watch one of the speed runs, right? There was an all bosses run that I had mentioned. I mean, it's 31 minutes pretty much. I could watch that for sure. So I don't know. Yeah, it's popular. It's not my favorite. I connect with Circle of the Moon more, and I don't know if that's because of. Actually, I'm almost certain it's because of the nostalgia on it. But the music in Circle of the Moon, just everything in it, I like a bit better. And I remember reading that I'm pretty sure Circle of the Moon was designed to be like a Castlevania Symphony of the Night to go. Like they took elements of Symphony of the Night and did as best as they could on the Game Boy Advance. So with that, I'm like, okay, well, I do like Symphony of the Night, but I like the one that's made for the Game Boy Advance better. So anyway, it's still an interesting game. I haven't played it in years. Clearly, it's not my favorite, as I had to stumble through a few things and be like, I don't even remember seeing it. Again, I kind of want to see these ranged weapons. for an example, and this Aguen or whatever it was, I give it a try, figure out if I know what those things are. But yeah, probably not going to run back to it anytime soon. Maybe. I don't know. Probably not. And that's going to do it. That's going to mark the end of this episode. A fairly short one, but again, while I was writing the notes, I'm like, there is not a lot of meat to go with these potatoes, but I still, it doesn't matter. I still had fun doing the notes and then obviously recording and whatnot. So thank you very much, everyone that has listened. I hope it wasn't too butchered. If you really like the game, give me your thoughts. As I said, Instagram is, I think, the best place to get a hold of me. I don't know too much about the social media stuff, so Instagram I think is the only one I'm going to stick with. I try creating other things, so we'll stick with that. Anyway, new episode in 2 weeks. And yeah, I guess that is everything. Yeah, the last thing, of course, is how can you tell if a pig is hot? It's bacon. Anyway, that's going to do it for me. I like that one. Now I'm really hungry and I'm going to go eat. I appreciate everyone listening. Make sure you give your loved one hugs and we'll catch you next time. Thanks. Bye.